Alright, hello. Today was an interesting day. Apologise for having to leave faster than earlier. I haven't been well at all. Feeling much better, and unfortunately I did this demonstration on how to use alpha mapping. I did a standard sort of screen cap using Camtasia, and for some reason the audio in the video was completely out of whack. So I'm redoing it, and I'm going to try using Google Hangouts on air. So if there is, then hello to you. If there's not, then fine. This is designed for my foundation degree students. Much is fairly simple. I'm going to take you through a really simple process so that you understand how they work, and then I'm going to show you how you can make it like a little bit of foliage or something by using it. We're going to be using 3dsMax and Photoshop, so you need both of those open. And so I'm just going to begin. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with everybody. And I'll share the entire screen. Okay, right, cool. I think you can see the screen. Mine's obviously just kind of bounced off into the distance because it's being shown many times. Right, so I'm just going to minimize this, so hopefully you can see everything that I'm looking at. I'm going to minimize myself and get into Photoshop. So the first place, we're just going to create two simple maps, and one of them is going to be a diffuse map, i.e. a color map, and the second is going to be a alpha map, so a black and white map. Okay. So I'm going to go into File, New, and I'm just going to make a simple Para 2 texture sheet, so 512 by 512 pixels. Remember, if you're going to do something for screen, then you really need to stay on 72 dpi. If you're planning on printing your textures or for display on paper, for exhibitions, things like that, and you want to whack that resolution up to say 300, and then you can print to about A3 size without too much pixelation. So for what we're doing, and obviously I'm literally just doing a test at the moment. In fact, I don't even need to go to 512, but we'll do that because of the screen size. So 512 by 512 pixels, and click OK, and I get this nice white square we've got here. So first thing I'm going to do is just going to give it a colour, and like I said, we're going to keep this super simple. So I'm going to go for a nice royal blue, and I'm just going to paint straight across the entire thing. Okay, so that's it. That's my diffuse map, and I'm just going to save that. I've made a little folder called foliage, and I'm going to save it in there. So I'm just going to call this blue diffuse. Okay. Correct naming conventions is something that I try and drill into you guys as much as possible. So if I end up not doing it, then you're allowed to tell me. Okay, so diffuse, blue diffuse, and we'll click save on that. I'm not really interested in quality; it's just flat blue, but we'll just hit OK anyway. Then with this, I'm also going to turn it. I'm going to turn it completely white. Okay, so I'm going to grab my paintbrush tool still, and then I'm going to press D on the keyboard, which gives me my default colors down here. And then I can press X on the keyboard, and that will give me pure white. Okay, so there's pure white. Now I'm going to press X again, so I get the black. Now anything that I color in black is going to be invisible. Okay, so this is my alpha, and anything that's black is invisible. So I'm just going to make a little blob in the middle. Okay, File, save that as, and this one, instead of diffuse, take away the word diffuse and just put alpha. Blue alpha, but it's the alpha for the blue, so it makes sense to have the correct name. So blue alpha, OK that, job done. That is it. You've made an alpha map by using black and white. Essentially, the way it works is anything that's white is visible, and anything that's black is invisible. Okay. So I'm going to go back into 3D Studio Max now. I've got a completely blank slate here. All I'm going to do is go to plane. I'm going to make sure it's square, and I'm just going to draw it straight into the viewport. Okay, I'm not worried about sizes and lengths and all that sort of stuff at the moment. I'm not modeling or anything. I'm just kind of showing you how the map works. So that's that. We've got a plane in there. We've made our two alpha map. We've made our diffuse map and our alpha map. So if I go into the material editor now, we get rid of one, which was the last one I did, that unfortunately the audio was completely shot, so I'm just going to delete those two. And I'm going to bring in, this is the slate editor, if anyone's not really used to it. You've got modes at the top there, and you've two options, one's compact and one's slate. Compact's the old one, That was around in all of the 3dsMax programs up until about 2012, I think. And then they switched and they added in the slate editor. Slate's quite cool, and once you get used to using it, it is actually pretty much the same thing. So you grab a standard material, same as you would in the compact area, and you've got the 6 balls. That's one of them. But this one's quite nice because it's very visual. So we'll drop that material number 27 over there. We can rename it if we want, and we can call it alpha. And then I'm just going to grab a bitmap here and drag and drop that in. I'm going to choose blue, my blue diffuse map. I'm going to plug that one straight into the diffuse color. I'm going to grab another bitmap, drop it in, into something my alpha, and that one I'm going to drag and drop into the opacity map. Okay, so as simple as that. That's it. That's the setup. If we click on that, this one here, you can see that the alpha is kind of cutting up that ball. Okay, so I'm going to leave that one there. And then I'm going to grab this little slot on the end and just push it straight onto my object. Okay, and my object turns grey, which is fine. That's exactly what it should do. It's not displaying the actual texture in the viewport. It's just telling me that it has a texture on it. So to show it in the viewport, I need to click on this option just up here. It says show shaded material in viewport. So if I click on that, there we can see that we've got our blue diffuse, and it's being masked by all of that black that we painted onto the actual map. Now you can see the border going around the outside, but that's just because I've got it selected. So if I deselect, you can see that there's our completely sort of alpha and working map. You can slightly see the edges there as well. All depends on sort of texture size. So we did 512 by 512. This was a 256 by 256. You'd see a lot more sort of jagged edges in here. So that is how to do an alpha map. That's the most simplest way of doing it. And you can imagine that if you had an alpha map that was a window pane, for example, then you could have the majority of the window pane being black so that it's see-through, and then you could have maybe bits of dirt and dust, or perhaps you've got a texture for snow that you could alpha in, so you could have these little bits of snow sort of gathering in the corners of the window, for example. So alphas can be worked into your 3D work for many different ways and reasons. The majority of the use for alphas tends to be for things like foliage or for hair, particularly in games, but it can be used elsewhere in other things. So talking of foliage in games, let's see if we can just use the techniques that we've just learned to actually create something that looks like grass, or looks like whatever. So I'm going to jump back into Photoshop again, and I don't need this map anymore, so I'm just going to close it, and then I'm going to go File and Open, and I'll just grab this image from Google. So it's literally, you can grab it, you can probably get it yourself. It's called Billboard Grass 0002.png. Now the thing with PNGs is they come without a background. So as you can see here, you get this checkered background. That means that it's invisible. It means there's a translucent background in there. So that's great, and that's perfect for when you're doing things like alphas. So if you can get hold of PNGs, it's much easier because it means you don't have to go around selecting what is grass and what isn't, or at least when you do, it's a lot easier to do it. So that's a PNG. The file types that you should be using most within games are Targas, PNGs, and JPEGs. The Targa and the PNG both have alphas built into them, which is great for game engines like Unity and Unity 4. And JPEG obviously is kind of the most well-known file format for transferring files around with good compression and good size. Okay, so what I need to do here is I just need to select everything that isn't grass. And I can do that very quickly by clicking on the Magic Wand tool, selecting any of this blank area, and you can see that it does select everything, but it isn't selecting the pieces on the inside. So to select those, we just go up to the top, click on where it says select, come down and click on where it says similar, and that will just, Photoshop will look around and see anything else that is has a transparent color to it, and it will select that as part of the selection. With that done, I've got everything other than the grass selected, so I know that everything other than the grass needs to be black because I don't want it to be visible. So with my brush turned on and I've got my paint color set to black. If you haven't got it set to black, then just press D on the keyboard and it will default your colors back to black. And then just paint over. So we've got a nice black background to our foliage. Okay. Then I want to invert this selection. So I want to select the grass instead of selecting the background. Okay. That's very simple to do. Just hold down Shift, Control, and press I on the keyboard, and that will invert the selection. Okay, so that you can then color the inside. If you forget that shortcut, which you may well do, I don't know, up here you can go to select and then invert, and that will flip the selection for you anyway. Okay, you can see it says Control Shift and I. Then I want to just flip my colours, so I can press X on the keyboard, and that will flip my foreground and background colours. I'm now painting with white, and I can just go straight over this image of grass, and now we've turned it white. So that's an alpha, and I think if you've ever seen an alpha map before, this one looks pretty much like any other alpha would look. So with that done, I can go just file and save that. So I'm going to save this as, I'm going to save it with the same file name, but instead of with 2 in the end or after the 2 on the end, I'm just going to write the word alpha. I am going to save it as a PNG. There's no real need to change it. This one's a PNG anyway, so we may as well stick with it. So that's that done. Okay, so now I'm just going to go jump back into 3D Studio Max. I'm going to grab a plane. That will be a square, doesn't really matter. I'm just going to drop that in. And then again over here on the right hand side, or if you haven't got the material editor open, again just make sure you press M on the keyboard and open the material editor. And I'm going to drag a standard material in, drag and drop. Material 28. Let's call this grass underscore alpha. And then I'm going to grab a bitmap, drop that in, and I want the diffuse color, if you like, of the grass. Open that, same as we did last time, just plug it straight into the diffuse color. Grab another bitmap in, again, choose the billboard grass alpha, the new one that we've just made. Drag that and drop it straight into the opacity, and drag and drop that straight onto our grass background. Again, because we've added in a new map, it hasn't been told to show in the viewport, so up at the very top over here, just click on Show Shading Material in the viewport. And there we go. So now we've got a see-through section of grass. So I'm just going to use my control keys. I'm just going to turn to 90 degrees so it's standing upright. And just lift it up from the bottom of the floor, and then you can see it. Okay, so if I just deselect it, you can see there we've got a nice little piece of grass. And you know, this isn't, you're not designing grass for a PlayStation 4 game. This is just a very simple way of creating nice little pieces of foliage that you can use on mobile platforms and that kind of thing. So with it selected, I could rotate it and have more grass sort of flowing at the same area and make a nice little rounded area. So I just rotate it by 30 degrees, and then I can make 5 or 6 different copies, and then we've got a nice little bunch of sort of grassy plains here. We've got a little bit of creeping coming in at the top there, and that'll be because we haven't clipped the bottom and the top of our alpha map just to make sure that it's not showing any form of white at all. That's why we're getting that. But if you can focus your attention on here, you can see that we've created a nice little alpha. We can even see in between 2 or 3 sets of polys. And you know, if I select everything that I've got in my scene here, you can see how it's all been laid out. And we're using only 10 polys, which is 20 tries, which is great. Nice and low poly. So that's that. If we want to do something a little bit more complicated than just a flat image, or something that shows a little bit more work through Photoshop, we go back in. I'm going to open up a new piece that I've got here. So let's say we want to create, I don't know, something like one of these little stalky things kind of sticking out. Let's go with this one, perhaps. This is taken from CG Textures. Again, it's a PNG, so I haven't got to worry too much about having to select it. If I grab one that I do have to worry about selecting, such as this one too, we've got a JPEG here, it's always one JPEG. So if I open this one up, we can see here that we've got a flat color in the background, which is quite nice. It means that I can probably quite easily, using the magic wand, select everything that isn't the actual piece of foliage. If I go and select similar again here, Okay, so here's a problem, right? So our select similar is picking out this dark or this sort of blue, green everywhere around the actual piece of photos that we want to keep. So best way of selecting this one would be deselect that. Down here at the bottom, we have our paintbrush tool turned on. Underneath your colours, you've got a quick mask. So if we turn that on and then reduce our brush size down, we can start painting in the area that we want to keep. Okay, so it is a bit of a long process. There are other ways of doing it. You can use magic wands, or you can reduce the tolerance when you're using the magic wand, so that you're colour picking what you want. But essentially, I'll just go around this quite slowly. You can see if I then click on this button again, it will select that as a selection set. Okay, so obviously you could go around, obviously with a nice little graphics tablet would be quite nice. I'm trying to use a mouse at the moment, so it's not really as sort of clean as I would like it to be. So that's that. We'll just deselect that and we'll see if we can get a tolerance level down on the brush. So if we bring it down to sort of 1, and select and then go filter, select and similar. There we go. We can see that we're starting to select more of it. Tolerance is probably a little too low, let's try 5. Looks like it might work, so let's go select similar again. We've got kind of a fairly good selection there. Tolerance on 5, that wasn't too bad. So let's go with that. We might have a little bit of bleeding of colour when we finally use this, but let's see what happens. So we've got our diffuse. This is the diffuse. We don't need to edit the diffuse at all. What we need to do is create an alpha. So using my white and black again, at the minute I've got the background selected, so that means I want black selected on my brush. A nice big brush again, and just paint straight over the top. And then Shift Control I, invert the selection, X on the keyboard to convert that to white. And then we can see that we've selected the inside section of that. Okay. One thing that I need to point out at this level here, when you're developing alpha maps for a game engine such as Unity, you don't use 2 separate maps. When you're developing for something like Unity, your alpha map ends up inside the diffuse map, which is why you need to export it as a PNG or a Targa. I'll show you in another video how to do that. Okay, so let's just save this as our 001 alpha. Okay, and then I'm going to jump back into 3ds. And here I'm just going to create a plane. This time I know it's not a square, so we go for a rectangle, and I'm going to have it straight on and just draw it like so. Ish that big. We can always resize this afterwards. Material editor. Let's grab another standard material and drop it in down here. And then I want a bitmap, which is this one, the diffuse color. Drag and drop that into diffuse. Let's just rename this. And then I'm going to get another bitmap. I'm going to choose my alpha for that, which is that one there. Click and drag that into the opacity. And then I'm going to drag that onto our rectangular plane that we created. And again, as with the ones before, you need to make sure you're clicking up here to show it in the viewport. Okay. Now, as I said, I was worried that we'd get a little bit of sort of, I was worried that we'd get a little bit of sort of pixelation for one, but also sort of bleeding from the image. We have got, this is an alpha, we can see this on both sides. And we can also select our mesh here and resize it if we want to kind of sort of fit the size that we want it to. Something like that. Scale it down a little bit. We can drop that in the middle of our bushes that we've got over here. Do a little bit of rotation. There we go. We can sort of embed that one into the rest of the foliage. Okay. So we're building alpha, so you can see how this would work if it was like a nice big scene. You've got all sorts of stuff going on over here, yet you wanted some foliage down here in the corner. You didn't want to use hundreds and hundreds of polys. Well, you just created this nice little chunk of foliage and you're only using 24 triangles. If you do end up with these issues where you've got, so let me just set that one, where you've got this, let's see, the right one. It's playing number 6, isn't it? So let's move that one there. Where you've got these white sort of outlines. Okay, so you can kind of see that there's a white outline. Now, all you need to do, if you do end up with that, is that this selection set, where it's white, needs to be a little thinner. Okay, so if you go back to your magic wand and select white, and then make sure you go select and similar, so it selects everything that's white. Go to your selection, down to modify, and then tell it to contract. You want it to contract by at just 1 pixel. You might need to contract by more, but at least by 1. Then you want to do Control Shift and I, and then you want to paint black. And what it's going to do is just reduce the amount of white across the alpha. And that way we should see less of the actual plant life within 3dsMax. It will sort of shrink it by a pixel all the way around the edge. And it's that edge that we're worried about. It's that edge that has those sort of lighter sort of edges on there. We don't want that. So I'm just going to resave this as the alpha, and then Max should automatically update. Okay, and we've got this. I think we probably need to go another pixel thinner, but you can see how that's working. Okay, so you need to be very careful with the way in which you create little alphas, but that's how you do it. Okay, so any questions? Just drop me a line. And what I'd like to see is you produce some nice little pieces of foliage for me to see next week. Okay. Apologies for the illness for this week, and I hope you all did really well with our little DeLorean task where I set you for unwrapping. Okay, cheers.